This is session 2 of God with Us, and today I'm looking at the story of Hannah, which comes in the first chapter of 1 Samuel. Hannah was married to Elkanah, and Elkanah had 2 wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Now Hannah had no children, whereas Peninnah had many sons and daughters. Every year they'd go on pilgrimage to Shiloh, where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. They would make sacrifice, and there they would share in the sacrificial meal. But Peninnah used to tease Hannah about having no children, and she was so unkind that Hannah would end up in tears and not be able to eat. It was a thing of shame in those days to not have children. It was seen as God's displeasure on you. And the fact that Peninnah had many children suggests that this had been going on for a long time. And Hannah seems to have reached the end of her tether, and on this occasion she went up to the shrine, up to where the ark was kept, and she wept, and she just poured out her anguish before the Lord. And her anguish was so deep that her mouth was moving, but she wasn't making the words, that they just weren't coming out. She was so emotional that Eli the priest presumed that she was drunk. Now I imagine Hannah had prayed for years that she could have a child, but this day she's holding nothing back. It's not just a polite request to God, she's actually pouring out her soul. She must have felt that God just wasn't listening to her prayers. Why was her life being made so miserable? But this time as she prayed, she made a vow. It said this: "If only you will look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life." Now that might sound like she's trying to bargain with God. You give me what I want and I'll give it back to you. So did God just give in because she kept nagging? Because she did bear a son whose name was Samuel. So was it just a manipulating ploy on Hannah's part? Or had she finally come to realise what God actually wanted of her? You see, Samuel grew up to become a great prophet. God wanted Samuel born, but not just so that Hannah could have a son. God wanted a prophet. And when Hannah finally came to understand that such an amazing gift of God should be dedicated to him, then her prayers were answered. She went on to have other children after Samuel, but when Samuel was weaned, old enough, he was taken to Shiloh, and he lived with Eli the priest, where he was trained and taught about God and taught how to listen to God and how to serve God. Despite her feelings, God had not forgotten Hannah. He had a plan for her. And when she finally prayed in line with God's plan, that's when she was blessed. Unanswered prayer doesn't necessarily mean that God is not listening. There are times when we have to come to a place where we need to be able to cope with the answer that we're seeking. It's a little bit like God puts the money into our bank account, but we can't use it until we know how to handle it, until we're ready to handle it. If we are in a position where we feel that God's forgotten us or He's not listening to our prayer, hold on to the truth. He hears our prayer, and He knows exactly when we can cope with the answer to our prayer.